got a big hole over on Market. Yeah, kind of. But then the mayor sent me something contradicting what you said, and he goes, "Don't make any edits to the Excel spreadsheet because then it screws with the form." I mean, too. No, I washed my hands of it. I made the form. He didn't like it. He went through and changed it. So. Yeah. I did what I do at home. I just pretend like I don't know what I'm doing with the laundry. So my mother sent me the laundry.
I don't want to hear that. Things are taking us back 50 years.
Dishes? Oh, I broke half of them as I was putting in the dishwasher.
I'm like, come on,
Yeah. Taking out the garbage. Filling the wood for I won't let my wife mow the lawn. So I've got a zero turn, and I love just cruising on the zero turn doing my lawn. So it's like, no, I'm going to do that. She gets mad at me. I want to know. Putting my headphones on, and I'm going to mow the lawn.
All right, folks, we're going to call this work session to order. We're going to work through this. I know we have an agenda here to discuss items on the agenda. I know questions from heads, probably based on reports or based on questions, whatever. So we'll just go through the agenda. We'll start at 7:1.
Can I start with the department head question?
Sure, Councilor Gibbs, please.
Because we have an agenda, a council meeting agenda, we can ask those questions, but this will be probably the only time I get to ask questions based on the reports that were in the packet. Is Richard here? Richard? I have some finance questions based on the reports that you shared with us.
Okay.
Looking at the deficit in general fund, in 2022, roughly $1,187,000 deficit in general fund. 2023, $1,431,980 deficit. Am I reading that correctly? That what we had budgeted, what we thought we were going to take in general fund, we did not take in that much, and so there is a negative balance, a deficit.
At this point in time.
Right.
There's still revenues to accrue, and we'll be done with that probably middle of next month. So there's quite a bit of sales tax revenue to book, as well as cable TV revenue, as well as, we just booked another $50,000 in revenue today for the school tax collections, because we're going to be loading those as part of our re-levy for property taxes. So it's still preliminary report at this point.
Okay, so I'm, like I said, I'm basing it off that report you gave us, 2022, 2023. So in the past, when 5-year plans were created under Colin, and then at least for the first year that the mayor has been in office, we had what we called a structural deficit, that $900,000-ish structural deficit. We kept rolling through that 5-year plan. Is that still the case for us?
Not currently. We raised taxes 4 years in a row, 17, 18, 19, 20. But we raised them roughly 15% cumulatively over those 4 years, which closed that permanent deficit that we were carrying. So now we're kind of in balance, depending on the year and depending on the revenue increases. But of course, as time goes on, as costs catch up and revenues don't accelerate, then we could be back into a deficit situation. I think we might be back in, say, between 3 and 4 years.
We'll be back into that deficit.
Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, based on revenue versus expenditures.
Yeah, and costs have gone up dramatically.
Mhm.
So
Okay. So the
And
19.
debt service is up too.
Right.
Unfortunately, excuse me.
Right, I noticed that our debt service has doubled, somewhere between August and the end of December, looking at those cash reports that are coming in on Fridays. I had a question about the $19 million that we placed in a bond anticipation note. I have a question, but I don't know if you can answer it. Do you know what our debt service payment is going to be on that $19 million? And I know that that's on a bond anticipation note. You know, we'll be looking at that in 2025. But do you have any estimation or idea what that debt service payment will be on that 19 million?
For this year, 2024, we're going to have a band payment,
Right.
which is a certain amount of principal and interest.
Do you
And
remember
that's
that?
in the plan. I don't know if I have that with me, but I'll get that to you.
Okay,
And then there's an estimated payment based on what's left over, based on number of years, based on 4.75% interest. So we'll be able to give you a picture on that.
is that something you would be able to calculate for us now? I mean, it's an estimate, I understand, because it's not set in stone until we actually bond it, right?
I'd rather give you the number that we have budgeted for this year.
Okay.
Because that's an actual payment that's dictated by having to pay so much of the band proceeds back with interest. The interest is very high because it's 4.75%. But hopefully by the end of this year, with great decreases expected, we're going to be able to put that in a permanent serial bond, less whatever we paid for principal this year at a lower interest rate, which would reduce the payment over the long term. So I'll try and get a picture on where that is with our bond agent to see what they're predicting the rates to be by the time November of this year comes along to put that into a permanent serial bond. Okay? But I'll send you the interest and principal payment we have booked right now as budgeted, required to be on that band by the end of the year. Okay?
When we had our finance meeting in December, we talked about how much of the general fund was being allocated towards payroll and benefits. And you supplied the council with basically a report and shared with us that 70% of general fund for this budget, this 2024 budget,
Right.
is allocated towards salary benefits. I don't know how to ask this question, or ask it in a way that's going to be clear. What kind of balance do we need to keep in general fund cash to make those salary payments and benefits? I don't know if that makes sense.
If it's a balanced budget for the year and we're projecting the salaries, it's covered by the revenue that's coming in. Of course, the budget is just one thing, and the actual results is another. But, yeah, they're already covered for the year based on the budget we have in place.
Okay, but if we bring in another deficit like we did in 22 and we did in 23, how does that impact us?
It doesn't.
Just
So
to
it
be,
won't.
That would just affect the available general fund balance. It doesn't affect the available cash. The available cash, of course, comes from our revenues, that we collect throughout the year, and then pay the bills.
and to be clear, we did not bring in a deficit in 22, we did not bring in a deficit. The projection that you have been provided is year to date. We closed out the books in 22 with a net gain of about $20,000, and we closed out the books in 21 with a net gain of about 1.4 million. So the report that you're looking at is not a final year-end report. It's a report to date.
That's right.
Right, I understand that.
Well, you understand that, but you just misstated something. I just wanted to make that clear. Because we did not close out the books in 22 in a deficit.
I did a worst-case projection back in October that said about $630,000 loss. So we'll see how that comes in. Right now, it says $1.2 million on our books, but that's without the sales tax collections for the last 4 months of the year. We're going to get a payment for that this month, or 3 months of that, and then December's going to be an accrual. And then we also, like I said, have the cable TV revenues and a few other revenues we have to post here.
Can you repeat what you said about October? I'm sorry. That's
I did a projection, worst case, in October for where we would be at the end of the year with the general fund, yes.
okay, sorry.
And it was about $630,000 loss. But that's worst case.
Mhm.
That was me projecting everything and being as conservative as I could with the number.
Okay.
So we'll see how that comes out.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
I had a question for Public Works. Did my eyes deceive me today, or did we have another water main leak out by GP?
We sure do. We're still working on it this week.
Yeah, it looks like we're in the water main break of the week club now.
It's, you know, the mayor and I have been in close contact, about this. With the temperatures dropping this week, there was about 4 inches of frost in the ground starting this week. So it's this time of year, very late to start getting frost in the ground. Typically, you'll have a bunch of breaks as frost starts to dry once the ground stabilizes. So we're going through that transition period. This particular area, we had 3 breaks last year on that end of North Margaret Street. We've encountered some pipe over there. While the pipe is not old for our standards, sections of it are poor shape on the exterior. We have some pictures that we can share with you after about the break if you want to see it. We just took some when Andrew and I left the site, but we're not particularly sure. I'm going to dive deeper into what's degrading that pipe in that area. We're going to talk to some people, but yeah, it's the time of year. We're going to probably have it, I'm going to guess, before the end of this weekend. Hopefully, maybe one more break. That would be nice. It's going to be the nature of it. It's going to be cold.
Yeah, I noticed that seemed like a really bad break up on Broad Street.
Yep.
That must have been a main.
The Broad Street one was one, and that was not due to frost. That was actually drilled through by a contractor, and because of bad utility locating. So what ended up happening there was we were doing test drilling for the Cornelia Street construction project, and that was at the limits of the project. We had mapping that showed our water line out in the street. We went up and located what we believed to be the water line. What it was an abandoned gas line, the old coal gas lines. We offset to the curb line, and they drilled down through, somehow managed in a 28-foot right of way to find our water main there, almost, 3-4 inches off the curb?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was about it.
So mapping showed it over here. We traced what we believed was the water line over there. Turns out what we traced was a gas line, and the mapping was inaccurate. Water main was actually over by the curb. So when the guys had the drillers drill over by the curb, they thought that was the best place to not encounter utility. And unfortunately, our 14-inch water main was right there.
Dead on.
Head on, right down the middle of
And
it.
not only that, to add into the insult, there was a 6-inch unidentified line over the top of the 14, and we missed it by about 2 inches. So literally, if we would have moved 2 inches to the right, we would have hit the abandoned gas line and probably would have prevented the whole thing. So a culmination of bad things. The mayor and myself had extensive talks about changes in practices for utility location, particularly in areas like that where we have high risk, I say, utilities that we're not clear on. And drilling is particularly dangerous for that. So we're going to probably do a little more back excavation for identifying subgrade.
So it wasn't a pipe failure, it was.
And there was not a pipe failure.
It was really just like, and honestly, it was just nobody's fault. We did the location of the utilities, or where we thought they would be based on multiple maps that we had. We told the contractor to dig where we thought it was safe. They dug where they thought it was safe, and they hit the line, like Mike said.
And, again, we're going to change our practices, but, we do 2,000 to 3,000 utility locates a year. And I want to say that this is the first one in probably 8 to 10 years where we hit it wrong, but we hit it wrong, really wrong.
Yeah, it was about.
Thank you very much. John, I had just one more question for John. How do we buy our sodium hypochlorite? Do we buy it in bulk? Do we buy it? I know at one time, I think when I went up in saw Bill Todd, you got that in 50-pound bags? Is that how we got that?
No, years and years ago it was gas.
Yeah, I know.
About
We don't do that.
25 years ago, we switched to a liquid, which is called sodium hypochlorite. And it comes in tankers, 6,000 gallon tankers.
So we buy it as a liquid?
Yes,
Does it is it delivered to the water plant and the wastewater plant in that same tanker?
yes.
We-
Well, it depends. Sometimes there's a dedicated tanker that goes to the water plant, a different one goes to the wastewater plant. Sometimes they split a load. Last year, there were 2 suppliers, one for the water plant and different one for the wastewater plant.
Do we assay that, the sodium hypochlorite that we deliver to the water plant?
What do you mean by acid?
Well, I know where I work, like, we tested everything, to make sure it was clean and there was no contaminants in there. I don't see it as a big issue with the wastewater plant because nobody's drinking that. But our drinking water, what do we do to ensure that the product is clean?
We make sure they comply with the bid specifications and they provide certifications that the product meets the bid spec. If you're asking whether every load is tested for a whole variety of contaminants, no, that's not done.
Okay, so the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to mention the company name, but I had problems with them when I was there in Champlain, and we got a bad batch of product, and it caused a great deal of problem. There should be some kind of check made on that product that meets specifications. Like I said, it's no big deal at the wastewater plant, but at the water plant it is. And I know that company, the reason that they gave us contaminated material was because the container it came in was used for something else and they didn't properly clean it. So I would hope that bulk distribution company would probably, we should check to make sure it's good, clean stuff. I mean, it's on us, because I know when the state came in and investigated that, it was our fault because that stuff was contaminated. So it might be a good idea to be able to check that somewhat.
Yeah, if the operators notice something with the material that gave them reason to believe that it didn't meet the spec, then they can certainly take action. If you want to develop a program to test every load or intermittent loads, then it's possible to do it. It's just how much money you want to spend on it.
You know, it's people's drinking water. I'd spend a bit.
Okay, tell me how much you want to spend.
I will do that.
Okay.
Whoa, it's a clean check. Sounds good.
Yes, I had some questions for, I had some questions for Chief Mitchell. Based on the reports that were shared with us. On the subject matter report that was shared, I just had some questions about acronyms, titles, things like that. I didn't know what they stood for.
Subject management report.
The SMR?
Yeah.
What does MHL stand for? What is that acronym?
NHL. Mental health law.
Mental health law? So those are mental health calls then?
Yes.
Do you
Or
know,
they're transported for mental health.
how, do you know how many, I'm sorry, do you know how many, either by month or per year? I mean, I could go through and know what, add the numbers, but do you know what kind of numbers, our officers are handling for those kinds of phone calls, the NHL?
Specifically for mental health.
Yes.
I don't have those numbers right here. I can add it to you for the next meeting.
Yeah, I would actually like that.
Yeah.
And then, what qualifies as lethal? So, in the category where, the call is handled, it says lethal, or, I mean, I understand what non-lethal is, but what qualifies as lethal on that report?
I think basically the siren is displayed.
If it's just displayed?
If it's just displayed, it is actually
requires a management report. If actually used in the city.
So either,
Lethal
if
is
it,
used in the city.
so either it is displayed or it's used, it's under the same, category. It's considered the same category as lethal?
No, so the next one over should show, displayed or actually used. We have had these, we just. Tactic, right on the first one, the first page is the second tactic lethal,
Mhm.
and then the next one type display. Either that the siren was displayed as, is technically a use of force if you show it.
Okay. What does SED discharge mean? What does that mean?
What is it?
SED,
SED?
Well, that would be a taser.
that's a taser?
Yes.
Then if that's a taser, then what's considered less lethal? Because that's also a category.
So there's a couple different less lethal options that we have. We have a beanbag round that's deployed through a shotgun, regular E70 shotgun. The taser is actually considered a less than lethal option.
But if SED discharge is considered a taser,
It's more specific than.
okay,
We also have the Bullrat, which is also a less than lethal option.
What is that?
It's a Bullrat, so it's fairly new to us. It's got hooks on the end, it's deployed at a small electronic deploying device. It's got a Kevlar line on it. It's a 7-foot line, would be used within 15 feet, and when it's deployed, it wraps around the legs to hold them into a incapacitated point where we can get control of less than lethal. Without hopefully injury to the. But that's fairly new, and that is going to be specifically named on the.
it'll be specifically named.
Yeah.
So it'll have its own.
Like the taser.
I had some animal control questions too for you.
Okay.
Do you know how many wild nuisance animals were collected in 2023? I saw the December report. And am I correct in reading those reports that dogs and cats and the nuisance animals were all handled by the same individual?
He doesn't handle cats.
He doesn't, but he handles dogs
The dogs.
and nuisance
And
animals.
nuisance animals, yes.
Do you know how many nuisance animals were collected in 2023?
I don't have exact numbers. We were actually just talking about it, it's that around 300 this last year.
Nuisance animals?
Yes,
And is the individual who is tasked with handling those, is he on a contract, an annual
it
contract?
is not.
Is his contract coming up again soon?
It is not.
And how is that individual paid? Is he paid just a monthly fee or paid per
So
call, or how
he's-
does that work?
It's going for call, he's keeping track, he's sending, handing us a bill. Basically.
And is he DEC certified?
Yes. That's part of the requirement that you got, through ags and markets.
I'm sorry?
Ags and agriculture markets.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And then I just had a couple of staffing questions. Looking at the 2024 budget, the mayor had shared the payroll line for each department, and in bold is the salary of either unfilled positions or new hires. And I had a couple of questions for you. What is a special patrol officer? I see those are not full-time salaries, right?
Special patrol officers are not, no, they would be, special patrol officers.
Yeah, I've got a few in the budget, and one of those lines is in bold, so either it's a new salary or it's an unfilled one. But I didn't know what special patrol officer was, and it doesn't look like it's a full-time position because the salary doesn't seem like it's full-time, but maybe, that was something I wondered about. Wondered if you could answer that question. Yeah, so I would be interested to know what that is and what function that person or persons will be.
It would be the youth safety advocate. And we did have one additional one based on the contract addition with Plattsburgh School District. That is a reimbursed position, reimbursed by the school district, and then it caps at 35,000.
Oh, okay. And we are down to 2 dispatchers, is that correct?
Yes.
And who is filling the function of the dispatchers? Because we had 4, then we had 3, now we have 2.
There's two dispatchers on the day shifts.
Mhm.
So the night shifts are being filled, that position is being filled by police officers.
But I see that our overtime in our evening shifts is the biggest problem. So what is your plan with using officers as dispatchers to lower costs? Because if we're using officers for dispatch, our overtime costs are going up. I don't understand how this is best practice. Can you explain?
Well, we don't. I don't have that right now. I plan on reducing that, trying to get people hired, looking forward to try to hire some people. Don't see filling the positions with dispatchers. I would like to.
Well, dispatchers are lower salary, correct?
They are lower salary.
And if we are hiring individuals at lower salary, that will not progress up the salary ladder as quickly as officers do, correct?
Correct.
Then it would seem to me it would be a cost-saving measure to hire dispatchers and utilize our officers on patrol, especially looking at our overtime totals in public safety were $1 million last year. And I just wondered what your plan was. So if we're not going to fill the dispatchers and we are going to continue to use officers, I would like to see a plan on how we are going to get costs for the patrol.
I don't think it's a matter, like Chief just said, I don't think it's a matter of not wanting to fill that, it's a matter of finding people to fill those vacancies.
But they're not vacancies in the budget, so there's no plan to fill it, isn't that correct?
I'd like to fill two dispatchers for sure. Yeah.
But they're not in the budget.
Yeah.
I don't see them in the budget, so that's what I'm asking. So you're going to provide, sorry about the bottle, you're going to provide answers to my questions, Chief?
I have one thing I want to bring up that I think would be a really good year to have all the other counselors. Is that at the beginning of each year, we get an organizational chart. I mean, I have trouble keeping track of where everyone is. And it seems like somewhere throughout the year, we end up asking for one for different departments, for maybe all the departments. It would be a lot better if we had that right up front. I don't think it'd be too much of an ask to have the organizational chart right off the beginning of the year, so that especially the newer people would be able to know, where everyone is, what the structure is, who's in charge, who's mid-management, who's at the bottom.
This is different than the payroll sheets that we provided for budget.
Yes, this would just be an organization, like who's in charge, who's the direct reports below that, because we're big enough now, I think we have trouble keeping track of who's where. And I think it'd be very helpful to do.
I agree, and I would like to see that for all departments, actually.
Yeah,
So we can
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Jeff just said that, yep.
So we can see the operations, the plan of operations for all departments.
Something I've noticed, well, I noticed this one because I walk by all the time, but some of our vehicles aren't marked. Like, I know the fire department pickup truck we bought last year still doesn't have a logo on it. I think it's a real good idea to have the logos on all the vehicles except for unmarked police cars, obviously. But I noticed we've kind of gotten out of having the cars, our vehicles marked. It's helpful if there's a scene or, you know, say Public Works is out there, people will know, hey, that's a Public Works truck, keep out of the way. I know we've gotten a little lax on that, I think, but it is a good idea to have those cars, trucks marked. I know that one's been over, because I walk by it all the time. Sure there are others.
I have some fire department questions for Assistant Chief D'Angelo.
Yes.
You provided the council with a pie chart. It's a colored pie chart, and it looked like a 2023 summary of various phone calls. And something that was brought up in the council well over a year ago was false alarm calls. And I see on the pie chart, what was hard is discerning the blues and the greens, and I couldn't ascertain how much of that pie chart was dedicated to false alarm calls. Could you clarify that?
So I have both from November. I don't have, that pie chart does not, that one graph and that year report did not actually give the percentages. It was just the actual pie charting.
Right, and so I just couldn't
Yeah.
tell if it was a sliver, if it was a chunk, I mean, because of the colors.
It's a considerable amount. It's the largest blue to the left side of that pie chart, so it's under 50%, but it is a large volume of.
Okay, so you've got a pretty strong representation of false alarm calls.
So that is a very broad category. That's the 700 series category of the NIFR reporting system.
Mm-hmm.
And so a false call could be an alarm activation due to malfunction, due to a mischievous act. So it's a legitimate call for us to respond and investigate. It just turns out that it was not an emergency and it moved under that false call. There are other categories in that NIFR reporting, such as service calls, good intent calls as well. But that false category is broad. It just is a call that does not result in an emergency mitigation.
So back in, I think it was 2020, Ira Barbell passed a local law, and there's supposed to be tracking fines, fees associated with multiple false alarm calls to locations. Has any of that type of call been enforced by the city with fines or record keeping or anything like that? And so I wrote that law with, in mind, trying to get businesses or companies to clean up their alarm systems.
Right.
So you wouldn't be dispatched to a false alarm call, and he was hoping that we would see the firefighters not be dispatched for things like that, and hopefully bring down calls, costs, and so on. So is that something that you have been able to, have you had to fine or multiple, calls to the same location, anything like that, in compliance with that local law?
So we have not, to my knowledge, fined or have the ability to fine anybody under that law. My understanding of that law is it is designed for building owners and landlords that fail to, say, repair a system. Not, a false call could be because there's a roof leak, water gets into the smoke detector head, sets it off, that would be considered a false call, but it wouldn't be a result of a negligence on the owner's part per se.
Okay.
So we have not taken action, to my knowledge, on that law at all. There is tracking available, but no, we have not seen a repetitive problem that has caused us to reach out to enforce that.
If I could speak to that real quick.
Yes.
So my office is involved in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're part of the enforcement arm of this. We have actually issued a fine to one person about this.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but it's in relation to, or respect to, an alarm that's malfunctioning that they haven't fixed yet, right? So, the fire department is in charge of assessing whether they believe that it was, a repetitive thing that, they haven't
fixed yet. So I know for a fact that we issued a fine to at least one commercial occupancy.
Okay. Most of my questions were actually answered by Chief Mitchell already, so, but I'm gonna start, what is that called, an insurrection? And bring up sidewalk planning. Are we still not in agreement with doing sidewalk plowing? The city doing sidewalk plowing?
No,
Discussion.
yeah, we've had discussions about.
Many discussions.
We've had many discussions, but I believe the last discussion was by, former Councilor Kelly about potentially doing a pilot program and taking on some sidewalks and trying to do some. Currently, under the mayor's direction, we are working extra areas in the downtown corridor, meaning Margaret Street, Trinity Park. These are all sidewalks that particularly the property owners should be clearing, but we are sending machines down through them. So are we doing expanded sidewalks? Yes, we are,
Yes, you are.
in the downtown corridor, with the current staffing we have, and that's very, very difficult right now.
Mhm.
To give you an idea, the last declared snow event, using the snow system that we have in place where the PD goes out, reports, goes to the building inspector's office and comes back to my office. It took us 3 days to clear the sidewalks with the staff I had. And that's after we cleared our own sidewalks. And then it took another, we just finished yesterday sending the fines out. So it's a very, very cumbersome activity. It requires a lot of labor, both out in the field and even in the office, to get it right. And then we end up having people, I'm assuming once they get the fines, they'll be calling back and trying to fight the fines and give us a reason why. So we have to take pictures before, we have to take pictures after.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's very, very cumbersome. So
Well, let me tell you, Mike, I'll comment on what my concern was. South side of the city, Monty Street. And I'll admit, I'll fess up to this. I talked to you last time this was brought up, and I thought, you know what, just get out there and shovel your sidewalk, people. Come on. But I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house, so I can be horrible like that, and I am ashamed to admit I am. I'm no longer. Because I went down Monty Street, and there's these little kids trying to get to school, and they can't, because some of the older, maybe elderly people that I know live on that street can't get out there just quite yet to shovel those sidewalks. And I'm looking at these little guys, and they're trying to get to school. So those are my concerns, of the school zones and you know, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm bringing it up again.
I mean, we don't have the staffing, it wasn't budgeted, and we've yet to come up with a plan, so we're currently, you know, again, we probably every other year this comes up, but again, we've expanded the role. We are doing a more aggressive downtown cleanup. Obviously, we're responsible for crosswalks, but we have to prioritize activities. Road clearing is number one. Then we move on to, we do send out simultaneously our sidewalks, we clean those. And then we move on to fire hydrants, catch basins. With the up and down that we've had, you probably noticed when we had those heavy rains, we had a lot of ponding issues, and that's due to catch basins getting clogged up with snow and ice. And then, you know, so to give you an idea, we have a snow fighting plan. I will actually forward it to all the councilors again about the priority list. It's, you know, I got a 4-inch thick file. I know Councilor Moore has seen it before, probably several times, but I will get it to the rest of the council, and we'll give you our priorities and how we go. The mayor went so far as I sent him a list of sidewalks that we cleared in trouble locations. How many pages was the mayor? 6, please? That our guys go out and take care of. Just our own sidewalks. So
Okay.
I will get that whole package to every one of them.
Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry, Julie.
No, go ahead, no.
A couple of things that were pointed out to me, and I'm sure there are other places in the city, but a couple of places like Jerky Street, without the striping, I know where the turn lane is, but I'm
The
not sure.
reason there's no striping is we ran out of weather. And we actually, the same thing with the Margaret Street, we actually had to put temporary striping. What you see on Margaret Street, for instance, on new construction is temporary. The contractor that was supposed to do the epoxy was supposed to do the epoxy on Durkee Street. We just did not have, we ran out of weather and they ran out of time for us. So there's, unfortunately, that's where we fell short, but again, that's first on the list.
The other street that, and it's because there's a school there, probably on Bailey Avenue. And I know that the lanes kind of shift down through there, but in front of the school, it's very vague as to where the lanes are. I know I've had people in my lane, I've had, not sure where I should be there, especially in front of the school. I think that, and I know it's never, I can't ever.
And I don't believe it ever was striped before.
No.
It's only the turn lane when you get down to Oak Street. Now, I would, Alicia's ahead of me here, we can probably have that discussion about maybe getting some striping on it. Again, that's a program that was handled by the old engineering department. So this is just hand-me-down stuff. We're doing the best we can with what we got. So we're, we typically, when we take up a road, like for instance, we did take up Durkee Street and you caught us, we did not get stripes back down in time. But we kind of put it back the way it was before. Making changes, I'm not adverse to it, I guess we don't, that's really not, it's a traffic safety thing, and it would be, used to be the old engineering department, but we're gonna work with Alicia on some of these
Great. I just wanted to pass those on. I got that.
things. Your feeling on that is right, on Bailey Ave for sure, and because we had questioned whether we should be putting lines all the way through, but it really is just those turn lanes by Oak Street, that is what the difference is there.
Yeah, no, that's the.
Yep.
That's, yeah, very good.
Any other?
Because I know it's wide enough. It's just, and when, nowadays, like when the kids go to school and get out of school, people kind of park a little bit where they shouldn't sometimes.
A little bit where we shouldn't, yes, my kid goes there, and yes, we park right on that street that says do not park there. It does create a little bit of a pinch point.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mike.
Yep.
All right, I don't know if this is for you guys or the mayor, but the resurfacing that's in tonight's meeting, are those written in stone? I think you might know what I mean.
Typically what happens every year, Mike and his team put together one of a list of, streets that are the most problematic. And then as we get through the year, there's some extra funding that we throw into the end of the project because we have the equipment, the material that we add some streets on at the end.
The other,
That one might get done this year?
the other driver to that is how well we perform on the streets we do. So what I end up doing, and the mayor's right, it depends on how our chips might look like. Say we kill the production rate and the yield on the asphalt. If I can squeak in a couple more, that's what we do. And yeah, for sure, we do that. I think tonight on there, you have Ruger Street from the town line all the way down to Adirondack Lane. We have North Catherine, which is horrible, from Boynton all the way across the Broad. We have South Peru Street, which we've been watching that water line, but we've made some improvements to that area. So South Peru is on the list, and I think South Acres Road.
That's what I'm wondering, just,
It's on there.
Yeah. It's on the last year too.
I was asked for the mayor to make sure it was on the list. It is on the list.
Get those wonderful calls.
And then, yeah, and keep it, also something to consider is that we also take an assessment after the winter, because the winter beats up the roads and there could be a road that becomes more problematic after the winter that we need to put some attention to. So that is also a consideration as we
The
go.
last 2 years, the mayor's actually been with us. Once the weather breaks, we do a written assessment. The mayor actually has written all this twice to do these things, so, and we will do that. But right now, those streets are earmarked, and like I said, North Catherine and Ruger in particular, there will be night jobs, and probably South Peru Street will also. So, yeah, and we're doing that because for several reasons. The constituents won't like the noise, but we'll get them up quickly and get out of their hair and also deal with the traffic. They're very, very high volume streets, so.
Along the same lines, is there long-term planning in that sense? I know you all drive around, I know we talked about that at one point. I'm thinking, you see South Platte Street, and yes, I'm very much pushing that because of the holes from my house, let alone neighbors and the phone calls that I've gotten. But I guess I'm making a pitch potentially for, all right, saying that scenario, South Platte Street, it's not getting done this year, it's not 2024 priority, but it's 2025, so it's 2026. That would be much easier, at least from my conversations with my neighbor.
So the 5-year plan, okay, it's not, it's included in the budget, but it's a plan. So we try to put down the ones we know. There are large full scale, like Margaret Street, a recon project. So we can check that box, and that's what we get taken care of in the recon project. Cornelia Street, even though we had did it probably 5 years ago now, by the time we're ready to do Cornelia Street, it'll almost be 10 years. 10 years is a cycle on a resurface. So we figure those out. And then we go on to the large scale ones, which would be the Ruger Street, North Catherine Street. Those are the ones we put on the 5-year plan, and then usually some secondary streets, and then we look at recommendations from the mayor and the council. Other councils in the past have said we were interested in this or that, for sure. But yeah, there is a 5-year plan out there. We update it, and we also have an inventory that we look at is historically when was the last time it resurfaced, because there is a threshold. We cannot request reimbursement for CHIPS money unless it's been at least 10 years. So.
Okay, here's a good one. I live on my street, in the house that I grew up in, and everyone, I have a lot of neighbors that are still there that I grew up with. So, they all, Julie, what's up with this? Is it our responsibility, the city responsibility, or is it, what is that now? It's not Bombardier, it's, whatever. That Wall Street and Main Mill, when they turn on that, is that our responsibility to try and figure out how someone's not gonna get killed on that corner? And I don't know how else to say this. I have watched 2 semis try to turn that corner, and it's horrific. They go up over the curb when they have to bring one of those big trailers or trains down. It's horrific.
So, typically, I'm gonna probably, this is really not something that's for the public works department. Again, it's sort of an engineering department thing.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
And it would also move on, Alicia, with community, our senior planner will do it, but it's gonna probably take a traffic safety study by a professional. I'd be out of my element, and I can tell you this, if there's a pilot car going with these rail cars, the pilot car better be stopping and make sure they can make the turn. There's a reason why. They have those, and Chief Mitchell can speak to that, but that's why you have pilot cars for those oversized loads. That might be a question to investigate with them.
There's a hydrant right there, and we watch, and they have people standing out
That's
there.
about the only hydrant that doesn't get hit, so it's good.
It's astounding. They go up over the curb, how that house on the corner, which used to be my parents' house, but anyway, how that doesn't get hit, I'm flat.
I would start with possibly checking why they're not running a pilot car and helping them, because they probably have steerable rear axles on those trucks, and making sure they make the turn correctly. You probably have a cowboy out there driving a truck that wants to get out of there fast, and that happens. Okay, the truck drivers. So, and then the next thing is, if it gets that more beyond that, then Alicia, Andrew, and myself will get together and look at the traffic safety study.
And we'll also touch base with Chief Mitchell
Yeah,
on
we've worked in
the
that.
pilot cars.
We've worked in the past with state police, they bring their commercial vehicle for unit into the city jail. Whenever we call them, problem, we'll let them know, they come down and run, watch it first, and see how much traffic is going through. And if there's a problem with that, and then there's enforcement after.
Yeah,
Stay in contact and stay with them.
definitely not when I grew up, that's for sure.
But it's been that way for 28 to 30
Yeah.
years, because I worked on Main Mill Street. One of my very original jobs was right across the street from your house, so.
All right, thank you so much.
Yep.
My question is for Mike and Andrew. I'm looking at the list here and I'm not seeing Beekman Street on it. So is it safe to say that they got bumped another year?
Beekman Street right now is bumped. We're still in the design phase. The big thing is we're trying to figure out what to do with storm sewer. So storm sewer and the design, Andrew had a meeting
Last Wednesday.
last Wednesday with the designer, and we're trying to figure out where to send stormwater to complete that. The other portions of the project are pretty much squared away, right?
Yeah, so basically what happens is anytime you tear apart a road like this, you have to meet DEC, SWIFT regulations, stormwater pollution prevention regulation. The way that road sits, there is currently no storm sewer anywhere around that. Any of the catch basins go into combined sewers, and there is ledge throughout the entire project. So we can't put dry wells in because the water is not going to percolate anywhere. So basically what we're going to end up having to do is go to DEC and request a waiver for our stormwater because we have absolutely nowhere to put stormwater for this project. So that's what we're currently looking into doing. So that process, unfortunately, is going to push us off from doing that project.
Okay, and with a big project like that, you want to make sure it's done correctly.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, very good. And I have another question. Actually, this would be more for Alicia and Courtney. Regarding the final draft of the Parks Renewal Master Plan that we're voting on tonight. Now, it's my understanding, like, if we vote yes on that to approve it, that means we're not saying, okay, we're gonna do everything on this list, because the city cannot afford to do everything on this list. That's a lot more than our ARPA funds that we are dedicating to this will cost. So, this is just saying, okay, we're cool with this, and, we'll do things as we can afford them, correct?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. It's a plan that encompasses all of the parks and, what they could be at their entirety.
Okay.
And, that's not something that we're committed to in any way, but it will position us, now when we have money or we want to go after grant funding, we have a plan to back it up and say, hey, this has been vetted by our community, we've approved this plan, the council supports this plan, and that positions us well to implement it in the future, but it doesn't tie us to anything right now.
Very good. That answers my question very well. Thank you very much.
I had a question about two of the appointments that are on the agenda, because we're not allowed to ask questions at the time of appointment, so this would be the only time that I could ask them. I see that we are looking at an assistant environmental manager and assistant chief wastewater treatment plant operator. I went back to the payroll line for the departments, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. Are they not in the original budget, John? Are these positions not part of the original budget?
The original budget included a number of positions that we presently have filled, 2 positions that we have people that have vacated in, and 2 positions we're thinking about filling. So the total payroll line item that was submitted is the one we approved in the budget. The assistant chief plant operator, in those detailed worksheets when the budget was developed, not listed specifically, you'll see a line item for chief plant operator, which we were anticipated filling with an estimated salary. We did a statewide and national-wide search for a chief plant operator. Got no applications. We did a request for proposals for contract management services for 4A operator. We got no proposals. So we made a decision to fill an assistant chief plant operator position with a gentleman who has a 3A certification. And one of his responsibilities, in addition to the general duties at the plant, would be to work on obtaining a 4A certification, which would then qualify him to be chief plant operator. Excuse me. We also did end up with one internal candidate who's going to try to pursue the required 4A certification that the plant needs to have. And we're working on some other approaches for trying to fill this 4A requirement. 4A certified operators are really because we don't have a chief plant operator right now, we need somebody that can manage the plant, who potentially is not certified, and we decided to create the position assistant environmental manager, which wasn't listed in the detail sheets last fall when this was being developed, but it's been recently created with civil service. So the way we're going to make sure the plants are properly managed and supervised is through the assistant environmental manager.
So how long have you been operating without, forget the position you just named, chief
Chief plant operator,
How
4A
long?
certification.
Yes,
Uh,
how long have you been
It's been
operating?
about 4 months. That vacancy occurred at the end of August.
And, do you have a chief water plant operator for the
For the
water
drinking water
treatment?
plant,
Not the wastewater, but the water treatment?
drinking water plant, yes,
You do?
yes.
That wasn't, sorry, just to interject, that was an unexpected vacancy, by the way, down at the wastewater.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. These positions are not explicitly budgeted, the way that they've been presented to us. I guess I'm not clear on whether they are budgeted, the way that you're presenting them in terms of the payroll line. Because I don't see that in the list of employees that the mayor shared with us when we shared the payroll line. So that part I'm very unclear on. Is this budgeted or not? Both.
I'm gonna say yes, that it is budgeted. If you were given a payroll sheet of active present employees, it would not include employees in positions that are vacant because they resigned. It would not include positions that we have budgeted but have not yet filled. So when the budget line item for regular payroll is developed, it includes not only existing employees, but vacant positions, plus anticipated positions that are vacant that we might. So
Yeah, I didn't get it.
So is it budget neutral right now?
there's sufficient money in the payroll line item to more than cover these costs.
And will that mean other positions will not be filled if we fill these?
Does not mean that.
It does not mean that.
But we will need to take into consideration when we fill other positions, how much money is remaining in the budgeted line item when we decide what salaries to set. And if for some reason we need to set salaries in these vacant positions, that would cause us to exceed the payroll item that you've authorized, we would need to come back to you and ask for an additional.
So this assistant chief wastewater treatment plant operator is a necessity for yours, it is, for operations. So that was, and is that also true for the assistant environmental manager? Is that also a necessity for operations?
It's a necessity for management of the plant.
For management?
Correct. The way our vacancies and positions are now. There's a number of ways you can structure things in order to provide management services. This is the way that we decided was best. You're welcome.
We've got about 2 minutes before the start of our regular meeting. We'll end the live stream for the work session.